have June Stoker, and she is just a delightful born and raised Texan who served as the senior pastor at First Christian Church in Alvin from March of 2016 to August of 2018. After leaving Alvin, she served as the senior pastor in Marysville, Kansas. She was previously employed by MD Anderson as a registered nurse. So welcome this morning, June. I wish we could all see you, but
Thank you.
Can you see us?
The grandkids were over this weekend, so I don't know what they did to my computer. So, you know, if we have grandkids, I know you understand.
Can you see us though?
Yeah, I am glad to be with you. Thank you so much for your invitation. It's great to see all of you.
Thank you. Can you tell us about your nursing career first and how it led to your life in ministry?
Okay. Actually, MD Anderson was not my first career. You know, when you're 109 years old, you have several careers. So this one,
not 109, by the way.
He's younger than I am.
Close. But when I got laid off at the airlines, I went back to school and got my RN degree. And actually, my specialty is OB/GYN. So how did I end up at MD Anderson in the cancer unit? A friend of mine visited one day and she said, come over and have lunch. I didn't know it was an interview. So I got hired, and I got hired in an area called bone marrow transplant. And when I went to orientation, people said, have you lost your mind? Do you know what that is? I said, I have no idea. But it turned out I ended up working with a doctor whose specialty was multiple myeloma, which happened mostly in the Black population, especially Black men. And from there, I learned that skill, and then from there I went to when my doctor went to New York, I went to the breast cancer unit, where I worked with a doctor who had been doing breast cancer for almost 40 years. And then I went to preventive care. How do you prevent all of these things that I've just gone through? So it was quite a journey, because I realized I cared for how people, not only how their health-wise, but I also cared for their mental and emotional areas. And so you had to involve your entire self in that. And when people say don't get emotionally involved, that's hard to do as a nurse, because you do get emotionally involved.
You had mentioned that you were with the airlines first. What did you do for the airlines?
I started in reservations, ended up developing, actually starting the ticket by mail process. I worked for Texas International, which those of you from Texas will realize we were a small regional carrier. And then we bought Continental. And I went to LA for 6 months as part of the transition team. And then we came back and we laid off people that they didn't need. And my job was not needed, because I had already developed our routes. And so when you pull out, those numbers don't change. So after my husband said I was costing him more to stay home than anything else, I went to school. So that's kind of where I am.
I see. I remember those days when our airline tickets would be mailed to us.
Yes.
Remember that? I'd completely forgotten about that until you mentioned that.
Oh yeah, that was a process, I tell you.
Yeah, and you
and then say something about the time you worked for the ad agency too. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that was kind of in between my being laid off at the airline and before I went back to school. The advertising agency said, we need somebody over here. And I said, I don't know anything about advertising. They said, all you have to do is check the fares for Continental. and make sure that they're correct and the whole bit. And I said, well, okay, I could do that. And then we kind of got into that. My husband would call it a do nothing job because I really wasn't doing advertising. I was just checking numbers. And then they sold us. Uh, the the agency sold to another agency. And my boss called me in and he said, look, we've sold to another agency and we sold you with them. And I said, I said,
Oh,
I said, you cannot sell me to them. Have you not heard of the Emancipation Proclamation? I am free. You cannot do that.
yes.
But when I went over and talked with the agency, they said, look, we're going to need the exact same thing that you're doing there as here. And so we had to play this game about, and my boss said, don't settle on this amount. You make sure that they don't give you under this. I was like, I was perfectly happy with the first amount the man offered, but I had to play the game, and I came back and just boo-hooed because now I don't have a job. But then he called and said, let's meet in the crosswalk, and we talked about it. He said, let's shake hands on the deal. So he offered me $100 less than what I really wanted. So, but it worked out. It worked out, and I really enjoyed it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling us a story of your husband and your son?
My you know, I always said, I was listening to part of your conversation here when I joined. I am always fascinated about how God really works things out when you have absolutely no idea what is going on. My husband worked in computers. He finally decided after working with the phone company, I want to go back to school. And I said, sure, if I can do it, you can do it. So he did. He got into computers, and a few years later, we've done some crazy things. We've gone from Germany to Saudi Arabia to went somewhere else. I can't remember. But we enjoyed our lives together. And then my husband developed multiple myeloma. And because I had at least worked in the area, I understood it. And he died 2 years after developing the disease. And on the way, because he was a veteran, he was buried at the Veterans Cemetery. On the way out the gate, I get a call from my daughter-in-law that says my son is in the hospital. He's had a heart attack. And so I got there, and 25 days later, he died. Yeah, so I was needless to say, I went downhill, totally downhill. Didn't realize how much, how depressed I really was. And I had an aunt in Dallas, and she said, okay, after a little over a year, she says, okay, enough of this. You need to get up and go do something. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? She says, go back to school. And I thought, this crazy old lady, has she lost her mind? I am not going back to school. You know, I'm 100 now. I'm not going back to school. Because I said, okay. She says, oh, I know you're saying, oh, crazy old lady. And I mean the exact thing. And I'm like, okay, that's why I tried not to talk back to any of my parents or grandparents, because they could read your minds. And so, I had gone back to church, and we were walking across the campus one day, and this man comes out the door, and he's like, oh, June, I know this perfect school you go to, and you'd really enjoy it, and you get your degree, and da-da-da. And he's just rattling off. And I'm like, when he walked off, I asked my friend, I said, who was that? And she said, oh, he goes to second service. Well, I always went to either first service or third service. And she said, I didn't know he knew that many words. He's never said that, and I've known him over 5 years. So he just kept on and on. And finally I said, okay, and my girlfriend says, I think your aunt's praying about this, you're going back to school. So I said, okay, John, if I go back, if I go listen, to go to the open house, will that be okay? He says, okay. So I go, and it's like, okay, this is nice. Ha ha. I leave. I'm all right. He continued, my aunt continued to call. I finally said, I'll do one class during the summer. Just one. It's 4 weeks. I'll give you 4 weeks. 10 minutes after I was in there, I was totally taken. So I went ahead and got my Master's of Divinity degree, and thought I had all my surprises behind me because I was going to get this degree, go home, read all my books, mark them up, understand everything that was happening in the biblical world, right?
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. God does always surprise you on all of these things. So that's how I ended up in Alvin. Loretta, who I was in another class with, called and said, my husband has cancer and can't perform all of his duties. Will you come down Sunday and do a sermon? And I said, sure. I got off the phone. I'm kind of like that commercial where the guy says, oh, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that. How do I do that? So I get off the phone. I'm like, I don't know anything about writing a sermon. I do 15-page reports, for school every other week, every other day. But I'm like, I write a sermon, what? So I called a couple of my professors and we talked about it, and they said, look, find your scripture, write what you think, just your thoughts, and listen to what God is saying. I'm like, yeah, right. Like God's going to call me on the 1-800 line and tell me. So
when she referred to Loretta, that is the pastor at First Christian Church in Alvin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Meet her
Yeah,
next week.
yeah. And so I said, okay. So I went down there and did it. And my regional minister called the next day, and she said, I heard you went to Alvin, da, da, da. I said, yeah. She said, they want you back. I said, okay. I told them I didn't mind helping. Just, they can call and let me know when they want me. She said, okay, listen, they want you back. And I'm like, is this a code? She says, no, they want you. And so I ended up staying there 3 years. So I guess the first sermon must have went over pretty well.
How you met Brenda Moss and your involvement with Gathering Place.
Well, see, that's, again, this is one of those lead-in things where I'm saying I don't want to do this, and God saying, yes, you are going to do it. And so he leads me right into this. So we get there, and one of my members come, Peggy says, we're doing the Gathering Place. And I said, okay, what is that? So she tells me, and I said, okay, this really sounds great. Well, I didn't know how great it was until I actually saw it in action. And then she said, well, you will be involved by doing the devotionals. And I said, okay. And so I go in there and I think, okay, we're going to just stand up, and because I didn't know how to do the first sermon, I certainly don't know how to do this one either, but we are just going to go and have fun. We're not going to get all into this, all adult. I want somewhere to be an area where I can just enjoy life and be a child. And so they allowed me to do that. And the more I got involved, the more I realized just how wonderful this whole organization was. And then when Brenda started branching off and she says, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman is going to kill us. And then I realized she lived in the same complex as I did. So then it was just a matter of walking over and visiting, and just, I think I had so many questions. I think she probably thought at one time I was the prosecuting attorney. I was asking so many. But it was such a learning process, and I've so enjoyed it. And it's become that other thing that involves me, that keeps me involved. And it keeps me involved with people. And it helps me to understand and receive the love, because that was one of the things that being involved in that, you could see people loving you. I would come in and they'd say, "Oh, there's the best." I mean, like the kids. And I was like, "Oh, they love me. And they don't even know me. And it's okay because they love me." And that helps me go through a lot of different things that I never thought I'd have to go through. So yeah, the gathering place has been a lifesaver to all of us. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
What brought you back to Kansas, or was it your first trip, or what were you doing there? And then how did you end up back?
She said, "How did you get to Kansas? Why?"
Yeah, how
Well,
did God do then?
after Loretta got well enough to come back and take over the ministry, I again was going to go home and do my studying, what I had decided I was going to do. And God says, my minister called and said, "There's an opening in Kansas and they need you up there. And why aren't you answering the phone? Because Steve Martin has called you twice." And I'm like, "There's nobody named Steve Martin except on Laughing, right? I'm not gonna fall for this." And so I did call him, and he says, "No, it's for real." And so I'm like, "Well, I at least know where Kansas is because of geography classes, but I'd never been there. So okay, let's go." I was 20 minutes from the Nebraska border, so you can see how far north I was in Kansas, northeast. And I got there, and my most favorite thing was the snow. I'd never seen snow. Not enough to stay on the ground long enough to go out and make snowballs and do all that crazy stuff. And I took so many pictures of the snow. The kids said, "If you send one more picture, we're going to send a hitman." Stop. I told them, I said, "Oh, I have to send you this one more because the snow, it's snowing sideways. I've never seen, why does it snow sideways?" So little man in a little green truck was kind of moving up the street, and he stopped because everybody knew I was the new pastor in town. Don't know why, but he stopped and he said, "Pastor?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You need to get inside." I said, "Oh, but I'm watching the snow. It's coming down sideways." He says, "That's called a blizzard. Get inside." So needless to say, I learned a lot in Kansas, and I really enjoyed it. But I got a call. Well, actually, I got up one morning after coming home on vacation, and it was like the Lord said, "It's time to go home." I'm like, "But I'm ready for the next snow, and I'm ready. I have all these things I want to do." And it was like, "It's time to go home." So I came home, found out a week later that my oldest daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, that's why she's had surgery. And according to everything that they know so far, she is cancer-free.
Excellent.
But of course, she still needs to go back for several different things. So I'm like, okay, maybe it is time to slow down. So I had Brenda cracking up. I said, I think I'm gonna retire this time. Since I flunked retirement last time, I'm gonna see if I can do it this time. And I am almost. I'm kind of semi-retired. I am still helping other churches, if they need somebody, but it's not like taking on the entire responsibility of a church. And it allows me to get out and visit with people and just enjoy enjoy me, enjoy what I like doing. And so,
You're covering for vacations and illnesses and things like
and all of
that
that stuff.
on a
Yeah,
regular
yeah,
basis.
right. And right now it's really, really neat. I had to drive to Beaumont a couple of weeks ago for a pastor there, and they were meeting in person, but it was just a few of them, so it was perfectly okay. It was wonderful, and I'd never been to Beaumont, believe it or not. So I enjoyed that. And the next week, I was asked to do a sermon for a church in Austin, but they are on Zoom, so that was good. And I've had a couple of other Zoom operations. One in Seattle asked me to Zoom in. So I've got the best of both worlds. I can stay here and play with the grandkids and still take care and do those things that need to be done.
Very good. Would you like to share any of your mindfulness tips to help us develop and maintain positive attitudes during times like this?
Well, I would first say cultivate the attitude of gratitude. And it's like nothing's gonna ever be perfect. I mean, when so we're thankful for where we are right now. We're thankful for what we've come through, because a lot of us have come through a lot of things that we didn't think was possible. And then be positive about what's going to happen in the future. And most people say, why are you never upset about anything? Well, if I can control it, I control it. And if I can't, I'm like, okay, God, that one's for you, not for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm finished with it, just to drive my mother crazy. And I said, but if you can't do anything about it, why worry about it?
Mhm.
I don't have that kind of time. And the other thing I would say is love yourself. We get so busy taking care of everybody else, we forget us. Love yourself. Take some time. I had a friend one time told me, do one thing that you enjoy every day. Whether nobody else enjoys it, whether it takes 10 minutes or it takes an hour, do that one thing. And I learned that because he called one day and he said, Stoke, you want to play hooky? And I'm like, I'm at work. He said, I am too. Let's go watch a movie. I'm like, are you serious? And he says, yes, wouldn't this be fun? And so I'm like, well, what am I going to say? Oh, just tell him you got sick at lunch. You ate something that didn't agree with you. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then I thought about it and I said, okay, let's do it. And it was wonderful just to sit and watch a movie, laugh and talk. And it was so dumb. I don't even remember what the movie was, but it was a non-thinker. Okay, but one thing every day that you like. Take a walk. Just visit somebody that's positive. Go to the library where the librarian won't let you talk loud, and you can find all the books in the world that you want to read. Just or visit a friend. And I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to apologize now. Listen to some music and have a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Call somebody on the phone, like at what time do we talk, Brenda? Midnight till 2 or 3, and just talk. It makes a difference the next day, how positive you feel.
All good advice. Do you have any hobbies or time for any?
Oh, sure, I have a lot of time. One of my favorite things to do is, of course, to read. And my favorite things are mystery novels, whodunits. And I discovered, again, I was in somebody else's conversation, I think at the grocery store, This lady was saying she had a new author, Louise Penny. And I said, never heard of her. And she says, oh, you'll love her. She is, she writes mysteries on a detective in Canada. Love Canada. So that's on my bucket list. I'm going to visit someday. And so I've gotten into, I read, and they're all just little bitty books. So I just read through and have yet to discover who the killer is before the end of the book. So she's a good writer to me. I walk. I, of course, talk with the with my grandkids and things. I take a nap during the day.
Ooh.
I know that is like so outlandish, and it doesn't bother
That
It
great.
doesn't bother me. And I told one lady that, and so she gets me this shirt that says, I want to be like Jesus. I take a nap every day. She said he had to sleep. So I love this shirt. So I just wear it. I'm like, whatever. I like listening to music. And I told you, having a glass of wine and just relaxing. And then when I get really stressed, my most favorite thing to do is to find a park that have those wonderful swings, and I swing. And I can swing for an hour out there by myself. I don't know what I'm gonna do now that these little children are gonna start coming back to the park. And I won't be able to get my swing. But yeah, I take the time, and sometimes I just go in and take a bubble bath. Guys, you'd love doing a bubble bath. My bubbles got out of control one day, and took me 2 days to finally get them all off of the curtains. It just went, I don't know what I did. I guess I didn't read the directions. Oh, man. But it was fun while I was in there.
Sounds like it.
Let me say this
Yes.
about June before our time is up. The 2 or 3 years that we lived in the same apartment project, occasionally we would get together late at night and break open a bottle of Merlot and frequently talk about religion.
Mhm.
And I was so grateful to her because studying the history of religion has always been one of my hobbies.
Mhm.
And I had never had a friend that I could talk with about Arius and Athanasius and their impact on the development of the Nicene Creed by Constantine and the political ramifications and all that. So she and I could take a half a bottle of wine and talk about religion for a couple of hours. It's
Yes.
just a blessing to me.
Mhm.
I just really enjoyed it, and we've had a lot of fun. I'm missing that terribly.
I miss those.
Yeah.
Well, we
For
understand.
allowing me to be here with you. I've certainly enjoyed it. And I'm so glad to be back so I can get involved again. So thank you.
You. We look forward to seeing you at some of our gathering place activities once we can all meet in person again. And of course, we have Brain Fair coming up on the 27th.
Yes.
If you're available to go, we'd love to see you there
Okay.
at Angleton Fairgrounds. Thank you for joining us today, June. It's
And thank you. Have a great day.
with you.
Okay.
Next